following announcement has been paid for by the Celtic World Order.
Hello there and welcome back to Celtic World Order. As always, it's Steve O'Matt and it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you back to the channel for a bit more Celtic chat. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're an old subscriber, we are greatly appreciative for you coming back again to talk more Celtic. There's not been too much to go on recently, has there? Although we did get that positive, the shot in the arm that we were all expecting, and that was the signing of Adam Ida. Aside from that, there's been a wee bit of sort of back and forward, old school bickering over fan allocation has returned. Now, what's interesting about that is you've seen the thumbnail, you've seen the title, and this is the thing, is the manager says this is not a Rangers thing because Brendan Rodgers done what we've been shouting out for as fans, that we've been looking for someone at the club, on the board, to get that backbone and come out and call it like it is. Now, if you've not been following up in this story, where have you been? It's quite simple. We were going back to that 5%. I say going back to, we were getting a 5% allocation of away fans for this season's Celtic versus Rangers Glasgow derby. After the broadcasters, after the sponsors, after the league body intervened and essentially says, what he's playing at, we have one of the hottest derbies in world football, let's try and inject a wee bit of atmosphere into that. So there was an agreement put in place that there was going to be a 5%. Now, as we know, Rangers find themselves very much nomads. They are homeless at this present time, playing their football out of a, I wouldn't even say 3/4 full Hampden. I would say a just over half dead empty Hampden. And you would have thought that, given what we've seen there at Hampden before with away allocations, etc., that accommodating a Celtic versus Rangers match would have been very much a simple thing. However, as this story has developed, Celtic have come out yesterday and made it pretty clear we are not going to be welcoming any Rangers fans into our stadium for the game at the 1st of September. Now, why was that? They elaborated, they made passing comment about safety issues, and that raised a lot of questions, but very, very quickly over the course of yesterday, throughout today, late into the afternoon and beyond, it started to paint a more clearer picture. It was all around safety concerns, safety measures, agreements that had been met between the two clubs that they were going to put into place at their respective stadia to make the away allocation, not just for Celtic and Rangers matches, but for all away games, European games in particular, where there's a larger allocation, make that a lot easier to deal with, make it a lot comfortable, and basically create less issues for travelling fans to make sure that that safety divide, where required, is easily met. Now, as we know, as I say, Rangers are not at Ibrox. We've seen the pictures, we've seen the state of play down there, and it's very much a big question mark over, are Rangers actually going to be in that stadium? Now, they're telling their fans that they expected to be in by September, depending on who you speak to, what you've read. I've heard from people that I know that support Rangers that they're actually thinking it's going to be closer to the end of November, and some fans even think that it's going to not even be this season. That one I think is highly unlikely, but I would certainly make doubts over, will they actually be able to do that game at Ibrox? It was supposed to be at the turn of next year in January. Big question marks there. In terms of what were these safety precautions and things to be added in, there is various things, and the picture has become clearer. And here's a picture for you, because this is what Celtic have done down at our stadium, as you'll recognise. That is the away end there, and what they've essentially done is we've brought in new stairwells, there's new security fencing. It just makes that transitional, or that sterile area, if you want to call it that, for travelling support a lot more defined. That's going to be able to reduce down on, for example, policing resources, stewarding resources. We've all been to those matches and we've seen those metal barriers that the police wheel out. Is this the kind of thing that's going to be able to minimise that kind of thing? Only time will tell. However, it's very clear that we have made several improvements to the infrastructure and the layout of our outside areas of the stadium. If you take yourself over to Ibrox, well, you can't exactly say that you've seen very much the same over there, have you? The works inside are pretty much at a standstill. They're still waiting on that overseas metal, as it were. They're still waiting on that steel, and it looks as if that's not going to be done anytime soon. Now, as I say, the problem that we have as being part of the Glasgow Derby, or as it was formerly known, the Old Firm, is that the media in Scotland, and in some cases, one side of the divide, i.e., Rangers, like to kind of merge us together, don't they? They like to pull us in together when there is an issue. It's a Old Firm issue, or it's a Celtic and Rangers issue. And this has very much been the case here. Celtic have come out and says, we're not going to give you that allocation because we don't feel that it's going to be reciprocated at the other end. Of course, that raised a lot of eyebrows, didn't it? A lot of people saying Celtic had thrown their toys at the pram, and some of the Rangers fans actually going as far to come away with they shat it. Not quite sure when I look at where we've been in terms of success recently, results recently, in general form getting into this season, why Celtic would shit it from anything to do with playing Rangers. But that's a side note for another day. Let's not get ourselves into that. The fact of the matter remains, you can see what Celtic have done. You can't see what Rangers are supposed to have done. Celtic have went out, they have applied for planning permission well ahead of time, on schedule, and got all these works in place. Also, it's been very coming to the fore in various outlets that have been putting out stories that in terms of that outside area, that's only part of the safety precautions. As I said previously when I broke this story the other night, it'll also have financial implications with regards to increased stewarding, perhaps increased policing, etc., etc. All this is things that would have to be adhered to. But another one that we're talking about was going to be the implementation of, like we see in some European stadiums, where there would be some form of safety netting. Where that would be in the divide is unknown, but you've got to imagine where we classically put our away support, that you'd maybe have a bit down the side, up to the tunnel at the side entrance between the old stand and where the away support are sitting, perhaps from the top to the bottom of the larger stand. Again, unconfirmed, but that has also started to come to the fore in other reports that safety netting is one thing that was also going to be implemented. Now, the manager, as I say, it took for our manager in a press conference when asked about this to, let's face it, not pull any punches. He punched them straight square in the face. He approached this with absolutely no fear and told it like it was. And he says, as it says there, this is a Rangers thing. This is not a Celtic thing. The manager came out and, as I just says, mentioned, we keep on trying to get bundled in together. Anytime there's a problem, it's a Celtic and Rangers thing. It's an Old Firm issue. The manager says, listen, that's not the case. And it was about time that record got straight, that narrative was put to bed. As he says, Celtic went out there, they applied for planning permission, they were granted planning permission, and they implemented all these things during the closed season over the course of the summer to get ahead of schedule so that they could meet those targets before a ball had even been kicked at great expense. Because let's not kid ourselves on, these things will be expensive, particularly when it's a football club that are going to contractors. That instantly is just firing that price right up, but it's only a side note. Celtic have went out there and they've done their due diligence. They've got their contractors, they've got their planning permission, and they've put everything in place. The same cannot be said for Rangers. It was good to see that from the manager, wasn't it? It was good to see someone put the foot down and, as I say, tell it like it is and put to bed this notion that this is a joint issue. As the manager says, we've done our part and we didn't feel that it was going to be able to be reciprocated at the other end in a timely fashion for that would-be fixture in January. Drawn a line under it, hopefully. Now, the other question is, and again, it's strictly speculation, isn't it? Was it a case of, yep, Celtic have says we're not doing it because we don't think it's going to be reciprocated, but again, just to play a wee bit of sort of devil's advocate, if you buy into this, Celtic and Rangers look after each other, do perhaps Celtic maybe know that Rangers probably aren't going to be at Ibrox in January and they're just playing along? I'll leave that one to your own interpretation. Personally, I think that's a stretch too far. I think the way the manager's talking there, that they don't actually care. They do not care. We as a club do not care what the problems are at Rangers and at Ibrox. But some people, for whatever reason, always have that mindset. And as I said there earlier on, I don't understand if Rangers still weren't going to be at Ibrox for the game in January. It shouldn't be a problem because we get massive allocations for Celtic Rangers games at Hampden. They are well versed in it. It shouldn't have been a problem. But as a wee side note, who knows? Maybe that is the case. So in terms of other things that have came through, we're talking about transfers, aren't we? As we saw, we got Adam Ida in the other day. That was very well welcomed. And it only really still puts us near enough at ground zero, doesn't it, in terms of where we were in the squad. Yep, we've lost a lot of peripheral guys, but you can argue the point that on paper, the squad is weaker because we've lost X amount of guys that would normally be scattered around our bench. But I think maybe aside from O, albeit he wasn't anywhere near the team in the latter stages of last season, we are still a wee bit light in numbers, but there could be some good news around the corner. I profiled a few people that we were supposedly linked with. Obviously, the name Arnie Engels was around there. That one's still swirling about. Of course, that is going to be a fee around about that £7 million mark. It remains to be seen what's going to be happening with that. Obviously, we know Matt O'Reilly. There was a chat, I even mentioned it, where Celtic going to finance any future moves based on a impending move for Matt O'Reilly. It seems to have went, thankfully at this moment in time, a wee bit stale with the Matt O'Reilly situation. Atalanta have come back in with what is apparently going to be their fifth and final bid. And again, it's still well short, isn't it? Because it's only around about £21.5 to £22 million. Yes, there would be add-ons, but Celtic are holding firm. Celtic want that £25 to £27 million up front, and then your add-ons pushing it up to a record fee of £30 million. Plus, of course, there's always that sell-on clause, aren't there? And it's good to see at least that Celtic appear to be steadfast in that, and they are sticking to their guns and saying, nope, this is the valuation we have put on this player. If you want him, come across with the money. Now, we've obviously saw that Atalanta are still looking at alternative targets. So hopefully they are getting fed up of this pursuit. But much similar to the way that we've done our business with Adam Ida, where we've been chipping away, you might still find that if they don't get any of these alternative targets that they're looking at that come that 11th hour, then yeah, they might come in and they might make us an offer that we cannot refuse. That would also be down to us. Do we take the money and run, so to speak, or do we hold and say, no, do you know what, we don't need to do it. Keep them there, get them for those Champions League games, and then, as I said previously, perhaps maybe revisit the idea in January. I'm a great believer that he will be leaving us. He will be one of our players that are going to be leaving us in the near future. I'm consigned to that. I would like to have him around, but if you told me, Steve-O, you can have him and he'll leave in January and you'll get that 25 plus fee, yep, do you know what? I'll be happy with that because, as I say, he's on a short time frame now. It's an inevitability that he is going to leave. But if you could give me the first end of the season, particularly for those European games, having a Celtic side with Matt O'Reilly in it, well, I am absolutely here for that. Now, aside from Arnie Engels, the other name that has came up, and this is another one that's you should probably be relatively excited about, I'd say, in terms of profile of player, is this young chap here. This is Alvin Sanchez. Now, as we always say here on Celtic World Order, who is he? What do we know about him? Well, he's a 21-year-old Swiss unders international. He's a central midfielder. Now, his value at this present time is said to be around £3 to £4 million. He's still in contract. He's playing his football in the Swiss Super League with Lausanne, and his contract expires in June of 2026. So again, with that sort of just, short of 2 years on his contract, that sort of fee is to be understood, £3.5 to £4 million. Now, again, I am not going to sit here and pretend that I am some sort of Swiss footballing expert. I've just done my basic research, and it all appears that from what's been said about him, at least, that he's a very promising talent, and the Swiss international setup, at least, have great things in mind for him moving forward. As I say, he's at Lausanne at present in the Super League. They're a very average team, if you will, at present. After 4 games in the league, they find themselves on 6 points, languishing in 9th place in the table. In terms of last year, well, they finished 4th in the relegation phase table. Now, in case you're wondering what the hell does that mean, similar to some of these leagues, where they do a split. They're set like your split. They have a top half who are vying for the championship, and then they have a bottom half table which are in the relegation dogfight. They finish 4th, smack bang in the middle. So in terms of a team, in terms of profile, yes, they're not exactly tearing up any trees, but they do appear to have a very, very interesting talent on their books in the way of Alvin Sanchez. In terms of his actual development, he has played 112 career games in total. 55 of them have been in a senior capacity at top level, with a further 33 being in Tier 2 of the Swiss League. The rest, again, developmental. He's currently under 21 for the Switzerland, where he has 7 caps and 3 goals in total. And prior to that, at the under 20s, he was 2 for 2, 2 appearances and 2 goals. As a career stats, he has 20 goals and 7 assists to his name. Interesting one there, as I say, in terms of profile, 21 years of age, very much making his way in the international setup with Switzerland. We saw Switzerland at the Euros. They've always been a team that have been able to provide and produce good quality players. Yeah, do you know what? They might not be full of superstars, but they have had many a top talent in their time. And as I say, the noise around this Alvin Sanchez is that he is going to go on to bigger things. And like I said with Arnie Engels when I spoke about him the other day, he's very much a player, Sanchez, that if you are genuinely interested in him, if he's someone that you want to sign for Celtic, now's the time to do it. Don't, spew up at the 3.5 to 4 million price tag. Take that as being put on the guy because there's actually something there. Now, we've looked at teams that we've bought guys from before. We went and spent £4.5 million on Bernabe. Sometimes when you come back to Europe and you buy talent from Europe, you get a better hit rate out of it. It's something a wee bit more tangible. And certainly the scouting report on this guy shows great promise. People are saying, would he be a direct replacement for O'Reilly? Well, Arnie Engels and Sanchez, they're different. They're completely different from Matt O'Reilly. However, Sanchez is a lot closer to what O'Reilly is than Engels is in terms of his style and his profile as a player. Now, again, if you are going to eventually lose Matt O'Reilly with the money that we have, I don't need to keep on repeating it. If you're interested in Sanchez, go and make it happen. If you're interested in Arnie Engels, go and do it. Get them both in the door. Strengthen that squad. Give yourself wider, vast, backup options, if you want to call it that, because as we know, we've got Hatate, we've got McGregor, we've got O'Reilly at the moment, and we've got Bernardo. Wouldn't it be nice to have these kind of talents also in the squad, hitting the ground running? And then if you were to lose O'Reilly, you know what? You've got 2 guys to choose from. But also, it's about forward planning, isn't it? Get them in right now and see if you end up getting the money back for them at a later date with O'Reilly, which you will, then that's perfectly fine. I am, again, all for that here. Another interesting one, and it's a homegrown talent, is Luke McCowan, Dundee captain at present. You'll all know him, 26-year-old Scottish player, so he would meet that homegrown quota. Reports are saying that Celtic are monitoring him. That's a term that's always used, isn't it? They're monitoring him. What does that mean? Is it firm interest? Well, it remains to be seen. However, I've read it online. I've seen the fan opinions. Let us know what your opinions are on Luke Cowan. But certainly for me, in terms of a player profile as an option, not a solution, but as an option, he's certainly one that I wouldn't be against. Now, the fee you're talking about, it to put it into perspective, Hibs are also very much interested in him. Hibs, of course, just took Quant off our hands on a season-long loan. But the fee that they are trying to put forward is £750,000. Now, my understanding is that Dundee want closer to £800,000, but obviously, Hibs being Hibs, 50k extra is a lot for them. So you've got to say, from a Celtic perspective, if Luke McCown is someone that Celtic have any interest in, 800k, an extra £50,000, you know what? I'm all for that. Again, we spent over 1 million on Kwon and we're loaning him out for a second season. McCown is a proven entity in our league. You know what you've got: 201 senior appearances in Scottish football, 47 goals, 29 assists, experience through the Premier League, the Championship, League One, previously Ayr United, now at Dundee. He's been there since 2021. And you know what? He's a well-rounded player. He's certainly shown recent times that he's got something about him. And we've had great success. I've said this time and time again on Celtic World Order, that Celtic have always been, for years upon years, built around having top-class international quality interspersed with a wee bit of the best of the rest from our domestic league. Only to look as far as guys like Paul Hartley, Barry Robson, McDonald, Caldwell. I know folk don't like Caldwell, but Caldwell played well for us. McManus. There is more. Celtic have always done well at getting in players from our own league and getting good value for money out of them. Now, as I say, £800,000. That's absolute chump change. It gives you another option. It gives you a proven option that you can use. I'm not talking about, he's not going to level us up in Europe for the Champions League. Absolutely not. But for those domestic games, well, we've seen it. He is more than capable. And at 26, he's at a good age. He's a wee bit older than I'd actually thought at first, but still a very good option. For that kind of money, you can't argue with it. And again, when we're looking at having the homegrown quota for Europe, I'm not, as I say, by one breath, he's not going to improve us in Europe, but you would still have to feature him at least in your overall squad. I'd much rather have a Luke McCown, who I know can contribute, than what we had and just get rid of, and a McCarthy, who was the homegrown quota that was nowhere near it. So we'll keep that one in mind as we look towards the game against Hibs. We'll start to come back and we'll cover that one in a wee bit full. More closer to the game coming up. It's a cup game. It's at home. We've got to be up for it. You know, after the performance against Hibs away, you've got to imagine that Celtic are going to up that level again. That was 2-0 that was going on 4-0. I'm expecting it to be somewhere around the sort of 3-0, if I'm being completely honest. Now, will we see Adam Ida directly into that squad? Remains to be seen. He will be at least featured, but will he be a starter? That is the question, because you'll probably seen as well today, the reports going round that in the open session of training, Kyogo Furuhashi did not feature. Now, I mentioned this when we signed Adam Ida, and I suspected that that signing was somewhat forced home by the manager. It was sped up by that knock that he took against Hibs. We saw him go down, and the manager had alluded to it. Looked as if they had to pop that dislocated. He's done it many times now. Shoulder back into place, and was a bit of discomfort. Then that would appear to be the case if he's not taking part in the open training session. Perhaps he's getting physio. Maybe he's getting some sort of condition or strength to try and help with that. But either way, he wasn't out on the grass training ahead of the game. So what an opportunity for Adam Ida to come in, make his second home debut and hit the ground running against Hibs. Certainly that's what I'd be doing. Will we get to see a wee bit of squad rotation around that? The likes of Sinisalo, are we going to use a cup goalkeeper? That'd be an interesting one to see as well. Are we going to get Palma coming back in from the cold and trying to make his mark? We've seen the improvements in Nicholas Kuhn. Is this time for Palma an opportunity at home, in front of a home crowd, coming in a cup game, to mix it up, to show what he's worth, to restake his claim, to be at least involved in the substitutions, let alone the starting 11. Anyway, that is us for just now. As I say, it's just a wee short update video. We'll be back to cover that Hibs game and hopefully cover a very comfortable win for Celtic. Anyway, if you've not done it before, if you've not done it by now, make sure you do before you head out here. Hit that subscribe button. That just means every time we do one of these uploads or we go live, you will be notified and you'll never miss any Celtic World Order content. If you like what you see, you like what you hear, goes without saying, give it that wee thumbs up. And if you want to help us out further, share it out. It just gets more people in and helps grow this community, which is absolutely thriving. If you want to subscribe to the channel, if you want to be a member of the channel, which is by way of donation, then you can. It's completely free. It's completely optional, sorry, should I say. All our content is free. It just helps go towards the running costs of the channel and helps us improve what we're doing here. And finally, if you want to connect with us elsewhere, you can get myself, you can get Paddy, anyone else that is associated, Josh, with the Celtic World Order. We're on X, and that's at Celtic World Order, CWO Pod 1888. So anyway, until the next time, take care of yourselves, and as always, hail, hail.